Hey guys, my name is JC, and in today's gameplay video, we're going to be putting this tribal deck to the test to see just what the best tribal lords in all of Magic can do. If you would like some help building your own list, make sure to swing by the channel where we have a deck tech discussing all the cards that are going to be played in today's deck, as well as the overall strategy. But with that out of the way, let's get to the game. So it looks like we're going second. Our opening hand is looking pretty good. We've got 3 lands. We've got a few changelings. We have Necro-Duality, which I absolutely love. We can start spitting out token copies of all of our changelings, and Feline Sovereign as a form of interaction for any nasty artifacts or enchantments that come down. So I think we can keep this. Alela just starts off with a tapped land and passes the turn. We draw a land for turn. So I think our start will be pretty simple. We'll just play our Wooded Foothills. We'll go crack it for a Triome. We'll put our Ketria Triome into play, and let's leave it there. Karn plays a land, and they leave it there. Teysa plays their land for turn, and they also pass the turn. Alela plays an Inventor's Fair, and now they tap out for a Lightning Greaves. So far so good, no one's gotten off to an awfully quick start. Let's see what we draw for turn. A Dollhouse of Horrors, another card I absolutely love, though it won't be too useful to us just yet. So I think we'll start by playing our Overgrown Tomb. We'll have it come into play untapped, so we'll pay 2 life. And then we'll get down our Gladewalker Ritualist. And we'll just pass the turn there. Karn plays a land. And Karn plays an Arcbound Ravager. Sacrifice an artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on Arcbound Ravager, and it has modular 1. And that's it for the colourless player. Teysa plays a land. And now they cast a General's Enforcer. Legendary humans you control have Indestructible, and they can also exile a card from a graveyard, and if it's a creature, they make a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. And they pass it there. Alela plays a tapped land, and now they play a Sigarda's Aid. So that probably indicates that this version of Alela is an equipment-based deck. You may cast aura and equipment spells as though they had flash, and whenever an equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach it to target creature you control. Well, I think we're starting to get some pretty good targets for Feline Sovereign here, and they leave the turn there. We draw a Universal Automaton. That's a really good card, especially with Necro-Duality. We can cast it for free. So I think this turn we play our Stomping Ground. We have it come into play untapped again, so we'll lose another 2 life. And we're going to cast our Feline Sovereign here, start to clear the battlefield up of some of these juicy artifacts and enchantments. It'll also test any removal that some of the other players have in hand, because it'll be Alela and Karn that'll definitely want to see this thing removed from the battlefield as soon as possible. Alela's holding priority here, so they may have some form of interaction in their hand, but they allow it through. So now we'll move to combat. We'll send Gladewalker over at Alela. Damage goes through, and I'm actually going to target the Lightning Greaves here. That gets rid of those. And now we just pass the turn there. Karn plays a land. And now they tap out for a Burnished Heart. They just pass through combat and leave the turn there. Teysa plays a land, notably Phyrexian Tower, so they have a sack outlet online now. And now they cast a Suture Priest. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may gain 1 life. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you may have that player lose 1 life. That's not too much of a worry for us at the moment, but just something to keep our eye on as the game goes on. They just pass through combat and also end the turn there. Alela plays a land, a Hall of Heliod's Generosity, so they can recur enchantments. And now they cast Inspire and Statuary. Non-artifact spells you cast have Improvise. I really like that card, but I don't get to see it too often. So we might see it do some pretty powerful and spicy things in this game. Unless, of course, our Feline Sovereign has something to say about it. And Alela leaves it there. So we really hope for an untapped land here would be nice to get down a Necro-Duality, but we draw a Kindred Discovery. So that will be good because it'll definitely get our card draw online. So I think we'll start by playing our tapped land. And I'm going to hold on to our Bloodline Pretender and Universal Automaton for Necro-Duality, especially if any of the players decide to play a board wipe. So we'll just move straight to combat. Karn blocks with their Arcbound Ravager. Our Feline Sovereign triggers, and we'll take out the Sigarda's Aid. Arcbound Ravager also triggers. That takes that out. So in our second main phase, we'll just pass the turn, feigning some form of interaction. Karn plays a land for turn. They move straight through combat, and they leave the turn there. Teysa plays a land, a Cabal Coffers. So let's hope they don't have access to a Urborg anytime soon. Otherwise, they're going to start to generate a lot of mana. Now they can cast Teysa here. Do we see it come down? They sack their Suture Priest for 2 black mana, and now cast a Dark Prophecy. Whenever a creature you control dies, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. One of the stronger card draw engines in Teysa. So once that starts to get going, we might be in a little bit of trouble because they're going to be able to keep refilling their hands. They pass through combat, and they end the turn. Alela looks like they're just passing the turn, leaving mana up. So they may be holding up interaction. Either that or they don't have anything that they want to play at the moment. It could be artifacts or enchantments they have in their hand and they don't want to expose it to our Feline Sovereign's ability. We draw a mana weft Sliver for turn. That's really great. That gives us a bit of access to mana ramp. Now it could be risky here going for Necro Duality, especially seeing as we're seated right after a blue player that might have counter magic in hand. But to be honest, I'd actually rather protect the mana weft Sliver because that would be our other option if we went for it now. And mana's honestly going to be more important than doubling up bodies, at least with what we have out on board. So I'm going to try for the Necro Duality and just really hope it sticks. And looks like the mana's being tapped, so we may not see this go through. And Alela casts a Spell Swindle. Counter target spell and create X treasure tokens, where X is that spell's mana value. So they're going to get 4 treasures off of that. So that was a good play by them. We'll at least get a little bit of retribution by going to combat and getting rid of one of their treasure tokens. So we'll do the same attacks as we did before. Glade Walker over at Karn and Feline Sovereign over at Alela. Karn uses their Burnished Heart to block. And now we should see them sacrifice it in response. And we do. Our damage goes through. We're going to target their Inspire and Statuary. And now that we've gotten rid of the Necro Duality, it's out of our hands. I actually want to get Universal Automaton down so it can make extra mana with Mana West Sliver. So we'll play that for free. And then we're just going to leave our turn there. Karn plays a land. So I'm sure the Karn player feels like they're in a little bit of a tight spot at the moment with us having repeatable artifact removal on the board. So they're going to have to make their plays fairly carefully here. Into a Duplicant. So it's going to be able to exile a target non-token creature. I think we can say goodbye to our Feline Sovereign here. And we can't do anything about that, so that goes through. So I think the Karn player is going to feel safer now moving forward in the game. And Alela too. And that's it for Karn. Teysa sacrifices their General's Enforcer, making 2 black mana and triggering their Dark Prophecy to draw a card and lose a life. So they may be digging for better cards at the moment than what's in their hand. And now they finally cast their commander, Teysa Karlov. If a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. And an often forgotten part of Teysa is that creature tokens you control have Vigilance and Lifelink, which becomes quite relevant as the game goes long. And it looks like that's it for Teysa. So Alela's Inventor's Fair triggers, giving them 1 life. Now they do have access to a good amount of mana this turn, so let's see what they can do with it. They play another utility land in Academy Ruin, so now they can put an artifact back from their graveyard on top of their library, which is exactly what they probably needed. They can recur Lightning Greaves and Inspire and Statuary if they'd like. So now they do start by casting their commander. Alela has Flying, Death Touch and Lifelink, and other creatures you control with Flying get +1/+0. Whenever you cast an artifact or enchantment spell, create a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with Flying. Now they have 5 mana left, so they might be able to chain 1 or 2 spells at least. They cast a Conqueror's Flail. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each color among permanents you control, and as long as it's attached to a creature, your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. That's not going to be too relevant for us. We don't have a lot of instant speed interactions in our deck, but that does create a fairy, and Alela leaves it there. We draw in a Nesh, which is really great. So we've got 2 of our biggest card draw engines in our hand at the moment, which is really great to see because I hate saying it, but I think we're probably behind out of every other player at the table. So let's start by getting our Mana Weft Sliver down. And because I'd like to try to get our Kindred Discovery online and drawing us as many cards as it possibly can, I'm going to take the time now to actually cast our Bloodline Pretender. We'll name Sphinx as our creature type, just so if we get to cast Unesh and it lands, we can trigger that. I don't want to go to combat at the moment, so I think we're just going to pass the turn there. Karn starts by casting an Everflowing Chalice kicked 3 times, so it's going to be able to tap for 3 mana. And now they cast a Mind's Eye. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they can pay 1, and if they do, draw a card. And based on the mana they have access to at the moment, they're going to be able to draw quite a few cards. So all of our opponents at the moment have got some pretty good value pieces online. Mind's Eye triggers for Karn, and they pay the 1 to draw a card. Teysa starts by casting Victimize, so they're going to attempt to reanimate their General's Enforcer and Suture Priest by sacrificing Teysa. And that goes through. So now they're also going to draw 2 cards and lose 2 life off their Dark Prophecy. And now they gain a life off their Suture Priest. So it seems like at the moment Teysa just hasn't found the key pieces they need to really get the engine online. Specifically a repeatable sack outlet and some way of producing a lot of mana. But we'll take any time that they can give to us by not drawing those cards. Because both the Karn and Alela player are certainly starting to go ahead here. So on Alela's turn, Inventor's Fair triggers and they gain a life. They start by activating Hall of Heliod's Generosity, targeting their Sigarda's Aid to put it back on top of their library. Now as they move to their draw step, they're going to be able to draw Sigarda's Aid. And now they cast Sigarda's Aid, which triggers Alela. So they'll make another fairy token. That also triggers Suture Priest. So they'll lose a life. And now they cast Acquisition Octopus. It's an equipment octopus. Whenever Acquisition Octopus or equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. That triggers Alela. That also triggers Suture Priest. And now as that enters the battlefield, Sigarda's Aid is going to allow it to attach for free. So they won't have to pay their reconfigure cost. Another trigger of Suture Priest goes onto the stack. Now I don't think Alela's going to swing over our way. At least from our perspective, I don't think we're the biggest threat, but they may feel differently. We'll soon find out. Maybe the Suture Priest is enough of annoyance for him to start swinging over Teysa's way. So it looks like Alela's going over at Karn, and the Fairy's going over at us. We're happy to take that damage. Much better to take damage from the Fairy than the Commander. That triggers the Octopus, so they'll be able to draw a card, which is what they definitely need because they are low on cards at the moment. We are too, but hopefully that's about to change in our turn. They play their land for turn, and they pass the turn there. So we draw a Pact of the Serpent. So we certainly hit access to a lot of our card draw spells, but I'm not complaining. Always happy to see more card draw. Now we may just hold on to the Pact of the Serpent for the moment, because if Alela starts to get out of hand and makes a lot of fairy tokens, we may be able to use it against them and make them lose life based on the number of fairies they have. Now I don't like that Alela also has access to 2 mana up, so we may lose what we cast here. But we really don't have much choice. We have to play into it whether we like it or not. So let's try to get our Kindred Discovery down here. So that does go through, thankfully. So I'm actually going to choose Dragon here as our creature type. Now let's move to combat. We'll send our Glade Walker at Karn, and then our other 2 creatures at Teysa. That triggers Kindred Discovery 3 times, so we'll draw 3 cards. We really want one of them to be a land. So we draw Magda first, a Guardian Glade Walker, and our last draw... Well, that's not too bad. We do have Mana Weft Sliver out at the moment, so it is going to allow us to generate mana with those. And with that, we end the turn. So I'm feeling like we're in a bit of a better place at the moment, but I still don't feel like we're far enough ahead to say that we're in first place. We're definitely not. Especially with Karn at the moment having access to so much mana. You can definitely play out some big powerful things. What I'm really hoping not to see is an Ugin come down. But they start with a Steel Overseer. You can tap it to put a 1/1 counter on each artifact creature you control. That triggers Suture Priest. And now they cast a Koldotha Forge Master. Well, this is definitely a scary one. They can tap it and sack 3 artifacts to search their library for an artifact card, put it straight onto the battlefield, which is key, and then shuffle. Suture Priest triggers again. I think that card's definitely going to attract the attention of the other players at the table. Well, at least we hope it does. They pass through combat. And I think they might be leaving up mana. Yep, they are. They're going to be leaving up mana to draw more cards with Mind's Eye. So Karn and Alela are definitely ahead, but I think my money's actually on Karn at the moment. On Teysa's draw step, Mind's Eye triggers. And they draw. Teysa starts with a Douthie Voidwalker. It's a really good card. I'm not too sure how relevant it is at the moment, at least in regards to graveyard hate, but regardless, Douthie is always a great card. It's probably one of the cards I was most excited about when Modern Horizons 2 got spoilt. That triggers Suture Priest. Now they sacrifice a creature, making 2 black mana and triggering Dark Prophecy. Mind's Eye triggers. And it looks like Karn's actually scooped there. I'll just go see, I'll check chat and see what's happened. There was nothing in chat, so unfortunately that may have been a scoop for reasons we will not know. Teysa cast the Sensei's Divine in top. So it looks like it's down to the 3 of us, which was a bit of a shame to see that happening. I don't think they scooped because they were in a bad position or anything happened that they weren't happy with. They activate Sensei's Divine in top. It may also have been a disconnection. That can happen. It is rare, but it does happen sometimes. And Teysa just leaves their turn there. Inventor's Fair triggers. Alela starts with a Solemn Simulacrum, which triggers Alela. That also triggers Suture Priest. Solemn Entering triggers Suture Priest again. And now Alela searches their library for a basic land card and puts it into play tapped. So Alela's definitely got a sizable army on board at the moment. We just have to see where they send it and whether they want to send a good chunk of it our way. That may be the case now that Karn scooped, which is another downside of players scooping, unfortunately. It does change the dynamics of the game. So it looks like Alela's going at Teysa. We have a fairy token, another fairy token our way, so they're splitting it pretty evenly between both of us. But once again, we're not getting the commander, which is really important for us. We can't block it, so we have to take the damage. That triggers Octopus. They play a land for turn, and they leave the turn there. So I'm glad to see we've kept our board state pretty much intact. We might just get to see the real power of Kindred Discovery here. So we draw a land for turn, which is great. So I think we'll start by playing Magda. That goes through. It also triggers Suture Priest. Now I'm going to move to combat. Because I don't want the Alela player to get a draw off of Solemn, we're going to send both our creatures in over at the Teysa player. I don't think they're going to want to trade their Douthie Voidwalker. So Kindred Discovery triggers twice, and so does Magda. So we draw a Heronblade Elite, another mana dork for the deck. And another cheap Changeling, that's good to see. We get our 2 treasures off of Magda. And the really spicy interaction here is with Mana Weft Sliver out. Whenever we tap one of our Changelings, we're also going to make a treasure in addition to the mana that it makes. So one of the really cool aspects of the deck. They don't block, so damage goes through. So to continue generating mana, I'm going to try to get our Heronblade Elite down here. That triggers Magda, we make a treasure token. Heronblade Elite, every time we have a human enter the battlefield, it gets a 1/1 counter, and we can add X mana of any one color, where X is its power. That triggers Suture Priest. So that lands, which we're happy to see. Now we do want to make Heronblade Elite bigger and get some blockers down, because if Alela's going to swing out at us next turn, which they probably will now that they're seeing the kind of value we're generating, we at least have to threaten them with a big crackback. So we'll get Imposter down first, which is also going to draw us a card as well. So again, you can just see the power of Kindred Discovery. We draw when we have creatures ETB as well as attacking. Suture Priest triggers. We draw a card. Liliana's Contract, that's actually a win condition. Bloodline Pretender triggers, gets another counter. And so does Heronblade Elite. So now we'll also get down our Taurian Mauler. The same triggers go on the stack. So we lose a life, we draw another card. Harmonic Sliver, very good to see against Alela. Bloodline Pretender just gets a bit bigger, along with its friend Heronblade Elite. So we have 7 cards in hand, and we do need some fuel to be able to use with Harmonic Sliver, so I think we'll hold on to our last Changeling. But otherwise, I think that's our turn done. Teysa plays a land, and now they cast a Brimaz, King of Ereskos. Whenever it attacks, create a 1/1 White Cat Soldier creature token with Vigilance it's attacking, and whenever it blocks, it does the same. That triggers our Taurian Mauler, it gets a 1/1 counter. Suture Priest triggers, giving them a life. They once again move through combat and leave the turn there. Alela's Inventor's Fair triggers. Now this is going to be a big turn for us and the Alela player. They have to do quite a bit of damage to us because we're going to be doing quite a lot of damage to them, possibly, if we hit our next turn. Our big saving grace at the moment with Alela has just been that they haven't got access to any mass card draw effects. So they start by playing Lion Sash. Graveyard Hate, they can pay white to exile target card from a graveyard, and if it's a permanent, they put a 1/1 counter on it. And then equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each 1/1 count. For each +1/+1 counter, on Lion Sash. That triggers our Mauler and Alela. Suture Priest triggers. That triggers Suture Priest once again, and it will also trigger Sigarda's Aid, so it'll be able to auto-equip to Alela, which they are targeting. Now they cast a Cyberdrive Awakener, a 4/4 with flying. Other artifact creatures you control have flying, and when Cyberdrive Awakener ETBs, until end of turn, each non-creature artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness 4/4. So that's quite a good ability. I don't think it's game ending though at the moment. That triggers our Taurian Mauler and Alela. It also triggers Suture Priest. That would have been great earlier with the treasure tokens they had out. As it ETBs, that triggers Suture Priest once again. Now in saying all of that, it might be enough to at least take us out. I don't think they have their eyes on Teysa at all, so let's see if we can survive this, because we certainly can't block anything in the air. And so from the looks of things, we have the treasure token coming our way, Alela going at Teysa, the Conqueror's Flail coming our way, as well as the other fairies. The Octopus comes our way, and the Solemn Simulacrum. So if we do the maths on that, 5, 7, 9, 11, 16, 21. So we'll survive this, but only just, unless my maths is horrible. And it might actually be, because I didn't take into account that all of them have flying. And we actually go down to 1 life. Wow, so we got very lucky there. They were so close to getting rid of us. That triggers their Acquisition Octopus, so they draw a card. Well, we certainly have a big turn coming up for us now, because we're about to die to a stiff breeze if we don't find an answer to either taking both the players out, or at least severely reducing them back. We draw a Seagate Lawmaster, which won't help us at the moment. Now, we can't use Liliana's Contract because we don't have enough life, and Pact of the Serpent we certainly can't use either. We can use it against the Alela player, but I don't want to refill their hand and not be able to kill them. So I think at the very least we'll start off by casting Harmonic Sliver. Oh, and I just realised that the Teysa player has the Suture Priest out. So that might be us dead. Well, at least if we are dead, we'll take something on the way out. We'll take the Cyberdrive Awakener for them, so they can have a little bit of an easier time. Now let's just see if Teysa shows mercy or no mercy. And unfortunately they show no mercy, so we die there. That's unfortunate, but let's keep watching. Let's see how this game turns out. Well, now that we're gone, my money's definitely on Alela. Unless Teysa's been sandbagging some good cards, but I don't think they have. And with the amount of damage that Alela has on board, Teysa probably has 1 turn, 2 turns at most. So they start by sacrificing a creature, triggering their Dark Prophecy, and they're recasting their commander Teysa. That triggers Suture Priest, they gain a life. They send their Brimaz in to attack, creating a Cat Soldier token. And it looks like that's it for their turn. Alela cracks their Inventor's Fair, so now they go search for an artifact card, put it into their hand, and they find a Sword of Kaldra. Now they cast it, triggering their Alela, and that is going to get automatically equipped thanks to Sigarda's aid. It gives equipped creature +5/+5, and whenever equipped creature deals damage to a creature, exile that creature. So from the looks of things, this might be the end of the Teysa player. So straight away they just send everything in. Damage goes through and Alela takes the game. Well, let's go to the wrap up and discuss the game. So remember earlier when I said the Suture Priest wasn't something to worry about, but it was something I needed to keep my eye on as the game progressed? Fortunately, I felt a little better because the Alela player actually told me in chat later on that they forgot to send 1 fairy to us in that big combat step, so we would have actually been dead either way. I also have to address the Karn player scoop in. It would have been really great to have seen how the game would have turned out if they didn't scoop, especially considering how far ahead they were. Their timing was also pretty bad for us, because we pretty much became public enemy number 1 for Alela once the Karn player was gone. But that is the game, and you have to be willing to adapt at a moment's notice. With those issues aside, I don't think we could have done anything else to really change the outcome of that game. We didn't see the Cyberdrive Awakener come in, and despite misplays on both sides, it was enough to take us out. Teysa had a few good permanents on board, but they seemed to really struggle to get the key pieces they needed to accelerate them ahead in the game. And once it was only them and Alela left, Alela was just too far ahead for them to stop. Speaking of Alela, they had a really good game. They were able to keep their commander down, and the tokens they were generating really helped them to close out the game. I was also glad to see Cyberdrive Awakener being used as a finisher, because as of recording, this card was only just released. For our deck, we got to see the real power of Feline Sovereign being able to repeatedly remove artifacts, and we also saw the power of Kindred Discovery in drawing us a lot of cards which, had the game gone longer, could have really helped to set us ahead of the game. But with that, we end today's video. Don't be a stranger to the channel because we will be continuing to upload deck techs and the gameplay videos that showcase how that deck goes in action. Until next time, guys.